Wisdom, the final frontier to true knowledge. Welcome to Wisdom Trek, where our mission is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. Hello, my friend. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, your captain on our journey to increase wisdom and create a living legacy. Thank you for joining us today as we explore wisdom on our second millennium of podcast. Today is day 1428 of our trek, and our focus on Friday is future technology and societal advances, so we call it Futuristic Fridays. My personality is one that has always been very future-oriented. Since my childhood, I have yearned for the exploration and discovery of new technology and advancements for the future. I grew up watching the original Star Trek series, and even today, while I'm on my 64th revolution around the sun, I still dream of traveling into space. Each week we will explore rapidly converging technologies and advancements, which will radically change our lives. At times, the topics may sound like something out of a science fiction novel, but each area we will explore is already well on its way of becoming reality over the next couple of decades. To keep with our theme of Ask Gramps, I will put the weekly topic in the form of a question to get us on track. So this week's question is, Hey Gramps, I'm starting to hear about sensors and the Internet of Things. What does this refer to, and how will it change our future? So today we'll do a deep dive into sensors and the Internet of Things. Last week on Futuristic Friday, we explored smart cities and how life, especially in the cities, will be changing radically over the next couple of decades. Our world is in a disruptive mode, which will speed up the exponential technology that is changing our world today. I am using some of the information mentioned in Peter Diamandis' blogs and his book called The Future is Faster Than You Think, and I'll use this as our starting point. The first area we want to look at is sensor proliferation. Sensors will not only transform healthcare and diagnostics. Any electronic device that measures physical, qualitative values such as light, acceleration, temperature, and then sends that information to other devices on the network qualifies as a sensor. Sensors add intelligence to our appliances, but more importantly, they add hours to our lives. Consider that in less than a decade, when you run out of coffee, your kitchen cabinet will detect your storage, cross-referencing sensor data with your coffee drinking habits, and order you some more. A blockchain-enabled smart contract will subsequently place the order, triggering an Amazon drone to deliver directly to your doorstep. If we extend this scenario further, let us imagine that you have your very own butler bot, who could transport the freshly ground beans from the delivery box to the cabinet, sparing you the trouble. If advances in computer power, such as artificial intelligence and high-speed global network, represents the center mass of the digital revolution, then today's sensors uprising is the outer edge of that revolt. If we consider the first part of tomorrow's smart environmental information processing pipeline, sensors are data-gathering apparatus that will provide the computers with the information that they need to act. But what is this thing called connected devices and the Internet of Things, or IoT? We are in the middle of a sensor revolution. The street name of this uprising is the Internet of Things, a vast mesh network of interconnected smart devices that will soon span the globe. Let's back up a little bit. It's worth tracing the evolution of this revolution to understand how far that we've really come. Just 31 years ago in 1989, John Romke, one of the inventors of the Transmission Control Protocol, or we call it TCP/IP, connected a sunbeam toaster to the Internet, making it the first IoT device. 10 years later, sociologist Neil Gross saw the writing on the wall and made a now famous prediction in the pages of the Business Week. And this is what he said: in the next century, planet Earth will don an electronic skin. It will use the Internet as a scaffold to support and transmit its sensations. These will monitor cities and endangered species, the atmosphere, our ships, highways, our fleet of trucks, our conversations, our bodies, and even our dreams. To some of you, this may sound like dystopia or a horrible thing, but it doesn't need to be. Just like the modern inventions that we use today would have been thought as unimaginable just a few decades ago, so will the proliferation of sensors and the Internet of Things. A decade later, in 2009, Gross's prediction bore out. The number of devices connected to the internet exceeded the number of people on the planet. There were 12.5 billion devices and only 6.8 billion people, or 1.84 connected devices per person, and that was in 2009. A year later, driven primarily by the evolution of smartphone, sensor prices began to plummet. By 2015, just 5 years ago, all the progress added up to 15 billion connected devices, with researchers at Stanford predicting 50 billion by this year. As most of these devices contain multiple sensors, the average smartphone has about 20. This also explains why the year 2020 marks the debut of what has been called a trillion sensor world. And it won't stop there. By 2030, those same Stanford researchers estimate 5 billion connected devices. And according to the consulting firm Accenture, this translates into a $14.2 trillion economy. Hidden behind these numbers is precisely what Gross had in mind, an electric skin that registers just about every sensation on the planet. Consider optical sensors. The first digital camera, which was built in 1976 by Kodak engineer Steven Sasson, was the size of a toaster oven, could only take 12 black and white images, and cost over $10,000. Today, the average camera that accompanies your smartphone shows a 1,000-fold improvement in weight, cost, and resolution. These cameras are not just reserved for smartphones, though. They are everywhere, in our cars, drones, phones, satellites, with uncanny image resolution not imagined just a few years ago. Already, satellites photograph the Earth down to a half meter, which is 18 inches. Drone cameras can shrink that to a centimeter, which is less than a half an inch. The LiDAR sensors that are atop of autonomous cars are on track to capture everything, gathering 1.3 million data points per second and registering that change down to the single photon level. What are the implications of all these sensors and the Internet of Things? We can see this as a triple trend of plummeting size and cost along mass increases in performance, and it is everywhere. The first commercial GPS, which was available to the public in 1981, weighed 53 pounds and cost $119,900,000. By 2010, just 30 years later, it had shrunk down to a $5 chip, which was small enough to sit on your finger. The initial measuring unit that guided our early rockets was a 50-pound, $20 million device in the mid-1960s. Today, the accelerometers and gyroscopes in your cell phone do the same job, yet cost about $4 and weighs less than a grain of rice. These trends are only going to continue and at a much faster speed. We are moving from the world of microscopic to the world of nanoscopic. As a result, we have begun to see an oncoming wave of smart clothing, jewelry, and glasses. Take the Oura Ring as one example, which is a whole new kind of sleep tracker that can measure blood flow and capture data at 250 times per second. Soon, the sensors will migrate to our inner bodies. Google's Alphabet Verily division is working on a miniaturized continuous blood glucose monitor that could assist people with diabetes in everyday treatment. Research on what is called smart dust, a dust mote-sized system that can sense, store, and transmit data, has been progressing for years. Today, a mote is the size of an apple seed. Tomorrow, when they're at nanoscale, they'll float through our bloodstream, exploring one of the last great terra incognito, the unexplored territory, which is the interior of the human body. We're about to learn a whole lot more, and not just about the body, but about everything. Remember last week, I mentioned that data was a new currency which was far more valuable than gold? The data captured from these sensors of today is beyond comprehension. An autonomous car generates 4 terabytes a day, which is the same as 1,000 feature-length films worth of information. A commercial airline gathers 40 terabytes, a small factory 1 petabyte. And what does this data really gain for us? It is plenty. Doctors will no longer have to rely on annual checkups to track a patient's health, as even today, they can now get a blizzard of quantified self-data streaming in 24/7. Even farmers now know the moisture content of both the soil and the sky, allowing pinpoint watering for healthier crops, bigger yields, and a critical factor in any society is far less water waste. In business, agility is the most significant advantage. In times of rapid change, agile and nimble trumps slow and lumbering every time. While knowing every available detail about one's customer, admitted can be a privacy concern, it does provide organizations with incredible level of dexterity, which may be the only way to stay in business in tomorrow's accelerated time. So let's look at some final thoughts. Within a decade, we will live in a world where just about anything that can be measured will be measured. It will be measured in real time and all the time. It will not only be your knowledge that matters, but rather the questions that you ask. Asking questions has always been the key to knowledge. Unfortunately, most persons are just too busy speaking to ask those crucial questions. In a world of radical transparency, where privacy concerns will take on a whole new meaning, as Christ followers, we should not fear transparency, for God already knows all about us. From the edge of space to the bottom of the ocean, to the inside of your bloodstream, our world's emerging electric skin is producing a sensorium of endlessly available information. Riding rapidly advances in artificial intelligence, this skin of sensors possesses the machine learning required to make sense of this information. I guess to cap off today's segment, I would say, welcome to the hyper-conscious planet. But as Christ followers, we know that God can and will use these technologies as we continue to establish His kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. Although some of this information may make your head spin, it is happening and will only accelerate with each passing year. So let's adopt the promises that we find in 1 Peter chapter 1 verses 5 through 7. In view of all this, make every effort to respond to God's promises. Supplement your faith with a generous provision of moral excellence, and moral excellence with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with patient endurance, and patient endurance with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love for everyone. And that's a wrap for today's question. Join us again next Futuristic Friday for another interesting question about our future on our Ask Gramps episode. Our next trek will be Meditation Monday, where we will help you to reflect on what is most important in life. So encourage your friends and family to join us, and then come along with us on Monday for another day of Wisdom Trek, Creating a Legacy. If you'd like to listen to any of the past 1,427 daily treks or read the associated journals, they are all available on wisdom-trek.com. And I encourage you to subscribe to Wisdom Trek on your favorite podcast player so that each day will be downloaded to you automatically. And thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, but most importantly, I am your friend as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal each day. And as we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. See you on Monday.